My brother Aaron mentioned that he was wrapping tefillin on my father's arms. It was one of the last acts of love that he performed for him. And it was with tefillin that was one of the first acts of love that my father performed for me. I was 14, 15 years old when I first came into the family. I was just a kid with long hair, living in Berkeley, California. When my father came into my life, I remember when he was engaged to my mother. We were walking to shul in the morning. And I think I must have left my tefillin in his car, and we went back to get it. I was talking to him, and I remember walking up the red steps to the shul. And I asked him, kind of like to make small talk. And I said, you know, you just came here last night to California. What if you had learned that you forgot to pack your tefillin in your suitcase or something? What would you? He said I would turn around and go back on the next flight and get the tefillin. And as a kid in Berkeley, California, that was just astounding. And that always stayed with me. That always stayed with me. My father had his ways of showing love for all of us. As Aaron and Moishi said, he had such a soft heart and such a powerful exterior. He would always call me a person of words, and he would always look at himself rightly as a person of deeds. He was a doer. He was a doer who didn't have much patience with words. And it was tough because as a kid growing up in his house, I knew how much he loved me. I could tell because he did all these things, and you'd find out about it afterwards. Like Aaron said, he'd send you away to yeshiva, and you didn't want to go, and you'd find out kind of backhandedly he's been checking up on you and doing everything for you. And his love was there, but I tried to reach out with words. I would call him on the phone. It was so hard to talk to him on the phone. He wasn't a person of words, he was a person of deeds. I remember when I first started speaking a little bit, I think it was Moishi's engagement or something, he'd always say, David, keep it short, David, keep it short, just like Brother Mordechai Walmart. David, keep it short. And I will keep it short, but later in life, I reached out to him, and something amazing happened. I suggested that we learn on the phone. I was living in Baltimore. And we began to learn, and I found that he had all the time in the world. All the time in the world. He was a busy man, senators, congressmen. He had all the time in the world to learn on the phone. The man who was not a man of words was so in love with Torah, so in love with Torah. He just wanted to learn. We learned Gemara, we learned Rambam. And our relationship blossomed through that. Lately, we've been learning for 12, 15 years. I would come to the house, and just over this past week, we began learning. He was sick, he was in bed. And we started learning Siddur. We were learning Hallel together. One of the last things I learned with him, I want to share with you. I want to share with him. Because as we were learning it, I was thinking about him. And I want to bring him into the room and learn this with him too. Hallel begins with the idea, Hallelu Avdei Hashem. We were talking about who Avdei Hashem are. You know, everyone wants to be Avdei Hashem. There's the elite club of people about whom Hashem himself testifies are Avdei Hashem. And Moshe Rabbeinu heads that list. When you think of Moshe Rabbeinu as an Eved Hashem, in some ways, even though the Torah says that about him, it's a strange designation. You think of an Eved as someone who subjugates his will to his master. You might make the mistake of thinking that an Eved is someone with not much will because he's given to subjugate his will to his master. Moshe Rabbeinu, of course, was a man with so much will that he argued with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When God said, "You're the man of the sneh," argued with him again at the Egel. My father was a man of intense will, but a man who, the more will he had, the more he was able to subjugate that to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The second piece of being an Eved Hashem is that at the time when Moshe most willfully resisted Hashem was maybe his greatest moment of being an Eved Hashem. When he said, where he threw in his lot with Klal Yisrael, and he says, "I am part of them." A lot has been said about my father's love for the Jewish people, but I would just add that for most of us in this room, for most people, the words Klal Yisrael are abstract. It's hard to wrap your arms around Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael is too big for us. For him, Klal Yisrael was like another person in the room. He had that intense emotional connection to the Jewish people as a whole. He was an Eved Hashem with powerful will that was willing to subjugate it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and an Eved Hashem who loved God's treasure, who loved Klal Yisrael like a brother. And through all of that, through all of his Klal work, as it was said before, we mattered. Our family mattered. When I was learning with him that last time, he said it was such a great learning session. The words that meant the most to him were "Mi kashem Elokeinu hamachbil hashavetz, hamashpili liros b'shamayim u'ba'aretz." Who is like Hashem, who is so high, who is so high? If you think about Hashem, he's got so much to worry about. 4 billion people on a rock orbiting a medium-sized star in a galaxy with 100 billion stars. It's got so many other things to think about. But as high as Hashem is, Hamashpili liros b'shamayim u'ba'aretz, cares about each one of us here on earth. Each one of us intervenes in the lives of simple people. That meant so much to him. He was very weak. He was in bed. And he turned to my mom and said, "That was the greatest learning. That was the greatest learning." It was that sentence. And when I think of that, that's something he emulated so much. He was a powerful, powerful man with so much more on his mind, you could imagine, than any one of us with our small needs. But our needs were never too small. And I know that's a cliche, and you go to funerals and you hear it and everyone says it, but it's not a cliche, it's not an exaggeration, it was him. Every one of our needs, it just meant so much to him. He was there. As Moshe said, no senator could take precedence over that. I want to end by just saying that we say about love, Aza kama v'sa'ava, that love is as brazen as death. Love is as fierce as death. Death is the great separator. We're sad here today not because we don't think that my father's in a better place. We know that he is, but we're sad because we're separated from him. But love is the great uniter, and love is more powerful than death. Love can bridge death. Love is brazen as death is. Love is fiercer. My father taught us about fierce love. He was fierce in everything he did. When you think of love, you think of something gentle. You think of something with roses. You think of something that's not strong. My father taught us about strong love. He taught us all. He modeled it every day. He was unabashedly in love with my mother. And he was unabashedly cared for us. I was talking to my sister last night when we first came into the family. Talked about fierce love. Went into Base Yaakov, Queens. Talked to Rabbi Newman, the principal there, and said, walked into his office and says, I have a new daughter that I'm bringing into the school. Who's the most wonderful girl in her class? Principal said, Adina Wolf. My father said, call her out of the class, please. Here's Adina, little girl, 8. My father says, I have a new daughter I'm bringing in the school, and you, Adina, are going to be her best friend. Adina later recalled she was petrified. Here was this man who was demanding that she become this girl that she doesn't know as best friend. Doesn't he understand how it works? That's not how it works when you're 8 years old. But that's how it worked for him. This is a man who would drive on the sidewalks when he needed to get somewhere. And he would drive on sidewalks when he needed to make sure his new daughter had a best friend. And Adina said, I became her best friend, and I never let that image out of my mind. Dad, you taught us about fierce love. We will love you, and we will bridge this divide. We will hold on to you, even in the next world. You taught us about fierce love. It's a love which resonates in our family, among all of us, among our brothers, among our sisters, among our in-laws, and the beautiful tributes we hear from his children to a mother that they're not biologically related to, that they feel so close to all of us. You taught us about fierce love, and we hope that we can continue to live up to your example.